Okay, so today I'm going to talk about this cloth sim scene here, and we're using a lot of the same principles that I've used in my other videos, such as doing simulations, um, exporting that simulation as an Alembic mesh, re-importing it, and then retiming it, and then setting up some great camera shots, you know. So the beauty in these kind of workflows is, you create these sims and you don't always want to look at the sim as a whole. You want to see what parts of it you can capture through the lens of a camera, right? And so you want to frame it as kind of like I don't know if you guys have ever done like macro photography where like you take photos of very close up to things, and so you have a special lens. And if you look up macro photography, you can see it. But yeah, it's like photos where you see close-ups of like bugs or plants, and then you see all the intricate details. So that's kind of like the approach of these kind of abstract shots that I do. And this one actually is inspired by another individual that does a lot of YouTube videos, by the name of SketchyVisuals. So you guys should check out that channel also. Great channel, where you can learn a lot of different concepts from him in lighting and motion design, product photography. But he dives more into the cinema 4D realm. So there's a lot of things you have to take and then reinterpret into Blender, which is, it's not nothing wrong with that. It's great. Like there's a, sometimes you don't want to always think about the type of software. Sometimes it's all about the concepts, and that's how I look at other channels, where you have these great artists. So anyways, this is inspired by sketchy visuals. You probably seen other people do these cloth sims that, where it's spinning up, rolling up like this. But that this was all originated from SketchyVisuals, who pioneered this cloth sim. So it's very popular right now, and I just want to walk you guys through the workflow of how I accomplished it here in Blender. Okay, so we're gonna open another scene, and then I'll show you guys how I got to this result here. So, and then I'll create a new shot. I think we should just go and create a new shot after I kind of walk you guys through the process. Okay, so we're gonna go to an old file. Let me launch it here, and see, it's opening. Okay, so this is how I start. So let me turn off these modifiers, and where I start is with a simple plane. Okay, so I start with a simple plane, right? Create a mesh, and I use a grid mesh, and then I start subdividing it. So I could turn down the amount of subdivisions in the Y direction, and in the X direction, I want to have a lot of subdivisions. So simple setup. I make it long, and then I add my subdivisions. Okay. From there, what I did was I added a first modifier, which was an array modifier, and then I set it to constant, and then just a couple inches, or not even an inch, less a tenth of an inch, in terms of distance. So it's moving in the X and Y direction, and I'll tell you why I did that later. And then in the Z direction, it's about 2 inches apart. Okay. So once I had that set up, I went and added a cloth modifier, not a modifier, but a sim. So I went here to my physics tab, and then I added a cloth sim. Okay. And from there, I played with some settings here. There was a lot of testing in between. It wasn't perfect from the beginning. Just want to make sure that's clear. There's a lot of testing that goes into it. So that's why I create my videos the way I create them, where I walk you through, because I don't want you guys seeing, the time spent, testing and testing and testing. So anyway, quality steps, speed. Let me pull this out. Speed multiplier. And what this does is slows down the speed of the simulation. So I want the simulation to go a lot slower than the actual time. And the reason being is because I want to be able to retime this when I export this as a Alembic mesh and bring it back in. So I set the speed multiplier to 0.5 to slow the whole simulation down. Otherwise, it would play a lot faster. Okay, so down here in collisions, I also make sure that my self collisions is on. Otherwise, these items here will not self collide. They will not collide with each other. And so I want object collisions and I want self collisions so that the cloth collides with itself. And then also the instances of this cloth, which is using the array modifier, they all collide together. So they work together to roll up. Okay. So next thing, what I did was I started adding in my forces, turbulence, and vortex. Okay. So let's talk about our force first. Okay. So what the force does, it forces things out or it forces things in. So like say you wanted to create an explosion, you would use a force to force everything out as an explosion. But you can also do the opposite, right? So you can attract things in. So I set my number to a negative 512, which is very, very strong force. Okay, so I set this to 512 so that my cloth is being pulled inward. Okay, so let's see if I had set anything. Oh, okay, so now in this next part, I set it to a sphere. And then I also set the min and max distance. So the minimum distance, which you can see is an inner circle that's dashed here. I set that to 3, and then the max distance, which is this dashed line, I set that to 16. Okay, and so that's where all the force is happening. So I have to make sure that this whole simulation fits within that force, so it gets pulled inward. Okay, so that's where it starts and ends. So going on to the next part, I'm going to jump to vortex. So the vortex is what actually causes that rolling of the cloth look. So I added a vortex so I have a physics spinning the whole cloth. So as it's being pulled in, it's also spinning at the same time to roll up the cloth. And so onward here to turbulence, right? I've shown you guys in other videos what the turbulence can do. So it creates irregularities in the space. So as this simulation is happening, it's creating all these irregularities. So it's not perfect, right? You can think of like turbulence as noise for simulation. So as that simulation is happening, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to see it kind of be imperfect in ways. And so now I'm going to start scrubbing or playing through the simulation since it's already cached. Okay, so I'm going to play through the simulation since it's cached already, so it'll play pretty smooth here. So as you can see, all those elements that I have are working. Okay, so we got the force pulling it in, the vortex turning it, and then the turbulence that's creating that irregularity, which is why it's kind of sideways, right? And then we also, in the array modifier, we had it kind of add a ramp look. And that's because I wanted to create more irregularity in this simulation. So again, as it's playing through, we get everything working together to spin up this cloth. And then the frames are set at 500. So we get enough time to roll up the entire cloth and also enough time that we can retime this in a special way. Okay. And then as you can see up here, there's an extra piece of cloth that did not make it. And that's because I did not fit it within the force I have here. And that's okay. So I'll leave it for now. I'm not going to fix it because otherwise I would have to resim the whole thing, which takes a while. And I just want to make sure that you guys can see how I'm working through this. All right. So moving on. Once this was done, you know, I've done this many times. Once I've have this simulation done, then I can go over here to export, and then I can export an Alembic mesh. Okay. So once I've exported that Alembic mesh, right, I can now create a new scene, and then I can re-import it. So I'm going to import this mesh. You probably don't see my open screen, but I'm going to import this mesh right now. locate it, simple export, and then SketchyVisuals cloth. So I'm gonna import Alembic mesh, and here we are. Okay, so if I start scrubbing through, here we are. Okay, so now it plays so much faster because it's not cached, it's not resimulating it, it's just an Alembic mesh with data in it. So now it plays very, very smooth. I can rotate it. Again, I can copy this around. I've shown you guys in previous videos. Okay. I can add modifiers on top of this too, which I'm going to do. Okay. So now I'm going to set up my, my shots. Okay. So let me frame this real quick. So I can see all my frames going back and forth. So I'm going to leave it right about here. And then we're going to add in a camera in the shot. So let's add a camera. We're going to move it back. And then usually I like to set my lens to like 135. I'm going to leave my depth of field for now. I'm going to add an empty point. Oh, let's get rid of that. I'm going to add an empty and I'm going to set it to plane axis. Make sure it's pretty big. We're going to name it to focus point. And then I'm going to shift this camera back and then set my camera up in the proper way. Hit 0. Oh, we're going to set this to 90 degrees. And then rotate this camera upward in the right axis. Just like that. Look through the lens. And then we're going to move back. And start framing our shot. Okay. And then just always like to make sure it's just centered. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the object itself and then I'm going to rotate the object around versus moving the camera around. Because what I also like to do is set a background for my camera. So I'm going to create a new plane and then shift it way back here and then set it up right. Make sure it's right. Okay. And then look through my lens and let's set up our framing over here. I'm going to set my frame to, let's see, where am I at? Oh, here we go. Okay, so I want to set this to 1920 by 1920 square shot so that I can always recrop it. And then I'm going to make this plane a lot bigger, even bigger. Okay, and then we're going to select camera again, go down here to viewport, and then I want the pass part out. I'm going to set that to 1 so that I can just see this, right? So if you guys ever wondering how you can get rid of everything else and just make it solid, this is how you do it. Okay, so now I'm going to take the object, which is the Alembic mesh, and I'm going to attach it to an empty also so that I'm not rotating the mesh itself, but an empty object that it's attached to. It just gives me more freeform rotation because the pivot of this is set in a weird spot, and then moving the pivot of an Alembic mesh, it always acts up. So I'm going to create an empty object. Maybe let's use a sphere so that we can see the difference between the focus point and this one. And I'm going to kind of just center it to the Alembic mesh. So I'm going to move this up. And then I'm going to go to a left view. Let's go to right, matter of fact. Okay, so that's pretty centered. Let's look at it from top down. Okay, it's pretty centered. So we're going to take this. I'm going to select the Alembic mesh first and then select the empty. Press Control P and then select that second option. So now this is attached. So now I can just kind of freeform rotate however I want. Okay. All right. So we're going to take our camera view. I'm going to create another window here. Drag this over. Zoom in so that I can get enough real estate here to see everything. And then I'm going to take this window over here, make sure I'm in 3D view. And now I can just freely do what I need while I can see everything here through my camera. And if I press T, I can get rid of that toolbar to the left. And then I probably don't need the toolbar on over here by pressing T. And then now I'm just going to take this, move it closer to my camera, and I'm going to start playing with it. So I'm going to take it, rotate it around, right? And I like something like this, right? It's kind of looking like what we had starting out. Kind of rotate it. Rotating the X. See what we get if we do Y. Spin it a little bit. All right. And I'm wondering if I can probably get rid. Let me turn it upside down, matter of fact, so I can not see that straight one. Okay, so we're not gonna be able to see that. It's the only problem. Okay, so we're gonna take it like that. Now I'm gonna kind of move it in the, see what axis. No, not the X. Let's see, maybe it's the Y. There we go. I want to move it in the Y direction. Okay, and then just kind of shift it upward. And so now let me scrub through, see how this looks. So that's pretty cool. I like this angle. It's very dynamic. How we can see that. It's kind of like the old one we had starting out. And it's pretty dynamic. So I like this. And we'll stick with this for now. All right, so now that I got this set up, okay, so now we can move on to some look development. We got the framing. We can set up this background. What else we need to do? Oh, let me set this focus point. Matter of fact, let me attach the focus point to the camera. So if we select the camera, go to this camera tab, and we go to depth of field, turn this on, we can now select our focus point because I named it that. Okay. Or you can sit here and sample it too. So I can go over here into the viewport and then select it too. And so I'm going to leave the f-stop there for now. I'm going to set my blades to 11. And then I'm going to play with this. We're not going to have bokeh, so I don't need to worry about these items. But I can talk about this in another video, how to work with these items. But I'm going to leave the blades at 11. And then 2.8 for now. And we're going to work on just setting up some simple lighting. Okay, so we're going to start off with the background. So let me name this background. Okay. All right, so we're going to go to our shader editor. Let me start rendering. And then I'm going to put this. Yeah, let's go to our shader editor first. Okay, I'm just thinking through this. So I'm going to select this, go to our shader editor, and then I'm going to make a new material, and then Shift A. I'm going to select emission, and then instead of using the original one, we're going to take that. All right. So our background is now emitting light. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I have complete control over the background versus using a light. I could do it traditional style where you add a spotlight on the background, but I'm just going to use a emitted background for now. So this is basically turning it into a light, and it's so far away that the light's barely affecting the mesh itself. Okay, so I can even go in here and change the color of the background, and maybe I'll just go something extreme. Let's do something extreme this time, matter of fact. So let's like give it a orange, maybe red, like a subtle red. I'm gonna go with something like this. So let's try this out, right? Let's just do some cool look development for this shot. Red. Now we're done with that. I'm gonna switch back over to 3D viewport, and now I'm gonna drop in a simple area light. Okay, so let's go to our top view. Ooh, I just noticed that I'm lighting, or I got this thing set up in this direction. Usually I set up from up bottom to top, but it's going right to left. So maybe I could take the whole scene and rotate it. Yeah, I'm gonna take the whole thing and just rotate it 90 degrees because it's weird working like this. All right, so we should be good. Select the light again over here, and then I'm gonna go to my top view, shift it that way, go to front, maybe go just 90 degrees up, and now we're starting to get something with our light. Okay, so you probably see it's probably blurry right now, and that's because of my focus point. So let's move my focus point to where the camera's looking, right about there. All right, so we're getting somewhere now. I'm gonna go to my front view. I'm gonna move this light up a little bit, just like that. And then now we're gonna just play with the light a little bit more. I'm gonna increase the size of it. Oops, why did it do that? Let's try that again. So I'm gonna increase the size of the light. soften the shadows. And then go to my top view. And then just start moving the light around to see what we get here. Okay. So one thing I know I need to do already is that I need to give this object some thickness. Okay. So I'm going to add a solidify modifier to the Alembic mesh. So I'm going to go add modifier, solidify, and there we go. And then now we just need to turn it down a lot. So let's go 0.01, see what happens. And then we'll turn it off and on. Okay, so that's looking better. Fill, what else we got? Even thickness. I'm going to set that to even thickness so it's even all the way around. Let's see my normals, high qualities. That make it, nope, we're not going to do that. It's going to make it spiky. Okay, offset, only rim, even thickness, fill. Yeah, we'll keep the fill. And then I'm also going to set shade smooth. Oh, actually, you know what I did? I did it that. Okay, so that fixed it. So we had some normals issues when I had it set to shade smooth. See that irregularity right there? So if I set it to shade flat, it's gone. I can see a little bit of facetness in here. Hopefully it'll disappear later as I work with the materials. So we'll just live with this for now. But as you can see, the cloth has some thickness now. It's getting a better look. If I turn it off, you can see the difference, big difference. And it's going to help with our lighting. So let's add a material on this mesh also. So we're going to go back to our shader editor and I'm going to create a new material. And being that this is green, I want to give it a complementary color. So being that it was red over on this end, right? It's something like this. Maybe I could sample it right in the viewport. There we go. So maybe I'll go something on the opposite side of the spectrum. Okay. So we'll drag it right across and maybe we get this blue color. Okay. The lighting's not right now. So we're still working on it. It's a work in progress. So we're just playing around right now. So we'll just drag to this blue area. Maybe you can add green. I like the blue with a little bit of green in it. So right there. All right, so from here, we can go back to our 3D viewport. And now I'm going to get rid of this light since I have a basic setup. I'm going to remove this again. And then now I'm going to add my real lights. So I'm going to right click, light operation, add light, which is a Blender add-on that I have. And I'm going to press 2. And now I'm going to start rotating my light around the mesh. So again, this is a Blender add-on that I'm using. It helps me just to light things a lot faster. I can't remember the add-on name. Let me find it real quick. So let's stop real quick and I'll pull up the add-on name. You probably don't see this window, but I'll find out what this add-on is called. Let's see, Light Wrangler. Okay, so this add-on is called Light Wrangler. You can find it on the Blender market. It does cost a little bit of money, but it's a great add-on to use to quickly light things faster. So even though I've deselected, or I have the light selected, but I'm no longer having those options, I can press tab and I'll activate those options again. So now I can just rotate my light around the object. Here, I like that look. That is really good right there. So something like that may work. Let's go this way, see what we get. So I'm looking at my shadows, right? I want to create something very dynamic, right? Again, as I explained in other videos, I like the use of shadows. I don't like to light things just like this. It's very, very flat. When you light things like this, it creates a very flat look. Now, it could be a look that you're going for, but I want to go for something more dynamic and something that has a lot of contrast. So I'm always paying attention to how my shadows are coming across. So something like that is pretty cool. So now I want to move my wheel. If you can see on the bottom left, it gives me the different options for my light. So if I start turning my wheel up, now I'm making my light brighter. And then maybe let's change the size. So if I hold shift and drag my mouse down, I'm making my light smaller, which it's going to give me even sharper shadows. Okay. If I hold shift and drag my mouse upward, or my wheel, then I'm getting a bigger light and my shadows are going to be softer. So I'm going to turn the power down. So I may go for something with softer shadows, maybe something in between. So let me just shrink it a little bit, increase the intensity, maybe turn it back over here some more. All right, so I get some more shadows coming back. Turn up the brightness a little bit more. I like this look. So let me just take the light and move it over here. That's pretty cool. And I'm kind of just following the rules of like compositions. So usually, like when you look at landscapes or something, is a good example. Things in the foreground will tend to be darker as they recede. You know, things will get brighter. And so like usually you want your foreground when you're creating composition. This is just basic stuff. Things will be a little darker in the foreground, and as they recede, they get brighter. So this is a pretty cool shot here. So we can see these lines following all the way through the composition, right? These edges are being lit. I'm going to stick with that. Okay. This is just one light so far. So I probably don't even need a second light. But what I could do just to try it out is adding a bounce card. So I can just create a mesh or a plane. And then I could take that plane, scale it up a little bit. And by default in Blender, these planes that you make, they're already white. So they already work well as a default color for bounce cards. So I can move this down, right? So now I got a bounce card here. So if I turn it off, right, we lose a little bit of bounce light. Okay, and I can move it closer again, right? So you always want to watch what's coming into frame. I'm not worried about if it's intersecting, right? I'm only worried about what's in the frame. See that? So even if it's intersecting, that does not matter because I don't see it in my camera. So if I move it up a little bit, we've got a little bit more bounce light, right? So I'm not liking that look, but I'm going to try taking it, rotating it, and the X, no, not the X, but the Y. See Y. And then we'll see what happens if we do something like this instead. Move it in closer. So let's move it back. That's pretty nice. I like that. Let's hide it. See what we get. Okay, so we're getting some more light on this back area. So maybe if I back the card up a little bit because I'm losing my silhouette. So like something like that maybe will work. So just a little bit. So I'm just paying attention to my silhouette here. So if you can see, oh, wrong one. So if you can see, I'm paying attention to this silhouette here. Okay. There's a silhouette right here that I'm paying attention to. I don't even know how to get rid of this pen mark that I made. This is the first time I've ever used it. So we'll see if it goes away. Okay, so I don't know how to get rid of it. But there's an eraser. So we can see if we can just erase it. Okay, we'll erase it. It's a good annotation tool to explain something. But anyway, yeah, so I'm paying attention to this shape right here, right? That's one shape, and then we got this background shape on the back. Okay, so those are the shapes I'm paying attention to. But you know what? I'm gonna get rid of that bounce card. I'm not gonna stick with it. It's gone. So I like what I'm getting by default, just with one light. So this is gonna be my composition here. Just one light, and that's it. That's all I needed. Okay. So let's just scrub through this animation real quick. Okay, so now we are getting some errors from the solidify mesh, which I don't know why, because I wasn't getting this before, but it's okay because we're not keeping this as final. This is just for video's sake. But we'll go back to my other scene and maybe let me just check this real quick to see what may be happening. Let's turn off even thickness. Okay, so that was a problem. Simple problem to solve. So I can just scrub through, very stylized. I like these colors, and we can see that I could just render this whole animation out, right? This could be a whole animation that I render out. So I'll let it sit for a little bit. And then in my final one, I actually did some other things too. So I'll show you what I did to the shader in my final. So I also did add some subsurface. So if I take this all the way up to 1 and then I changed it to Christensen, I also did that. So now we're getting this other look to it now too, where light's starting to pass through the cloth. And so I'm going to change all these to 1 so that it's a white, because what this is RGB. It's red, green, blue. So if I take all these and put them to 0, it's the last two, now we're just getting red coming through. And then if I set this one down, this is green, right? Oh, just turn it to 1. That's green. And then we got blue. So that's why I just went like this and turned them to 1, because I want them all white. All right, so now if I pull the scale back, right, I'm setting the thickness of the translucency. So I want to kind of match it to what the cloth is. So let's go 0.2, 0.5 maybe, and 0.5 may be a good number. Let's go 0.3, see what we get. I'm going to go 0.5, and then 1, just check it. 2, see what happens. And we'll go to 1 and 0.5. Okay, so 0.5 is a good number. I like it. I like 0.5. So we'll go to this light because things are starting to get a little bright. Move over here. I'm going to pull the brightness down a little bit. And right about there is nice. Okay. So this is looking pretty nice. I like this shot. It came out pretty nice. Redoing it using some other colors. So we'll go back to my other scene now. Let me go and switch over, and we'll open up that final scene, and then we'll just walk through that real quick. It'll be a lot of the same stuff that I just did, but we'll show you the final version. I think I did add another modifier on top of that. Okay, so this scene here, as you can see, I actually added another subdivision. So if we go to a wireframe, you can see there's a lot of subdivisions on this model for the final, right? So I even I tessellated the model even more by just adding a subdivision and setting it to 2, and then I added a solidify modifier, and that's because I just didn't want to see the facets if I can recall. So when I turn this off, now we can see these faceted lines on the mesh, and so that's the reason I added the subdivision modifier on top of this, so that we can get rid of the facets. Okay, so now if I render this, same thing that I did with that other shot that we just worked on, where, you know, I have a background, right, which is just a gradient happening. So I'll show you guys in the shader editor. So this is just a gradient node chain that I made. So it's just a simple gray to a white, right? And I'm just controlling it a little bit, rotated 90 degrees. So it goes from dark to light on this shot. And then switching over here, the material again. Let me switch back to the shader editor. I forgot to show the material. So here for the material, again, I turn the roughness up, use subsurface, set it to Christensen, put the weight up to 1, change all these to 1s to make them white. The scale set to 0.3. What else do we have? Using a green color for this shot. I mean, if I want it, I can explore some other colors. It doesn't really matter. Blue, turquoise, greens, yellows, right? Whatever I want, right? So we'll just go with a red, orangish red for now. Set it to that. Okay, so there's a color set, and then the lights. I have 3 lights in this scene actually, so I can walk you guys through my lights. Let me just turn up the exposure just for this video sakes. And so you go 0.25, maybe 1. Okay, we'll set it to that. That's nice. So let's go back to our 3D viewport. So I got 3 lights set in this scene. Okay, so let's walk through them real quick. So again, same concept. Set up the background, light the background, whether it's emissive or you got a spotlight, and it's set so far back that the mesh is not being affected. And then now you add in 1 light. Let's see, I think my key light was this one. Okay, so this was my key light, and I could have stuck with something like this, this is really nice already, but I wanted to add some more kicker lights into the shot. So I added some fill light here. So as you can see, this was in complete darkness in this section. And so I added a fill light on the opposite direction to fill in this area. And then I added a kicker light. Okay, so the kicker light was just to create a shape here so we could see the shape of this because it's a round shape. So if we look over here, we're looking at this section of it, which is that round shape. So that's why I added the third light so we can capture that shape, because when we see it like this, that shape really disappears. It's just kind of a lit void. So I added a kicker light so that we can capture that shape, right? And we can follow it all the way through the animation. And then going to my cameras, right? Same concept, created a focus point, added the focus point to the depth of field. My lens camera is set to 135, and then f-stop is set to 1.8 to create a lot of depth of field and focus on one part of this mesh. And then that was it for the camera. And then I just set my focus point. So as you can see, my focus point here in this shot is set to the center of this cloth, which is what we're looking at here. So that's about it. You know, you can play with this stuff. Hopefully you guys can recreate this thing in Blender. Again, I give a lot of credit to SketchyVisuals' channel, who came up with this idea to create these cool cloth sims. And the beauty of this also is I have that other scene saved too, which is the simulation. And so being that I created that scene, I can always go back and reuse that scene to create different simulations. And I do want to go back and create different simulations. And so then I can just export new meshes and then re-import them, create cool shots. I could probably get like 3 different shots just out of this one simulation here we're looking at now. So all you got to do is just continuously rotate the object around to find new cool shots, move lights around, and you can create a multi-shot animation with just one mesh because you're doing these close-ups. So hopefully you guys like this video. Have more coming, of course, and that's it for now. So I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.